probably been good for that.
That was a fantastic.
All right, yeah, right there.
Yeah, I like
yeah,
the
let's try
video.
doing raise hands for this. Again, here's where we are getting killed by the latency that I was talking about, where it is not quite that live, completely interactive sense, but we have a path towards that. But I'll try to point at people and raise hands or something. Did you have something? Yeah, right there. Yep.
No, I don't have anything. I apologize.
Oh, okay. All right, Sly Dog.
Does it have a Wi-Fi 6 antenna in the Quest 2?
No, there's no external antennas. It's all internal. You work in a situation where you've got really marginal signal.
No, I'm just thinking of reducing the latency. You know, I use 5 gigahertz now with virtual desktop, and it works great. And I'm just thinking that maybe it'll work better.
Now, actually, the network frequency has almost nothing to do with the latency, where you get on almost all the Wi-Fi frequencies, it takes, it's microseconds to send a packet through. It's all about congestion and higher levels of kind of the operating system and application levels that adds all the latency in. So even on 2.4 gigahertz, it could be super low latency if everything was set up right and it wasn't having any problems. Yeah, chicken.
I'd love to hear any more you'd like to talk about the tech from the tracking software and stuff that can be used for the AR glasses that y'all have been evolving through VR process.
So it is, internally the AR teams are almost completely separate from the VR teams. The way this has gone, it almost feels like a coup in some ways, where there was Facebook Reality Labs that was basically doing the AR side of things. And for a long time, they literally weren't allowed to talk to the VR people. They were worried about that they would, they'd want to get excited about working on cool production stuff instead of this long-term AR stuff. But we talk more now, but the technology stacks are really surprisingly distinct. They have their own computer vision work that we're moving towards combining all of them, because they had some good stuff. We had some good stuff in Quest for the tracking, and we're working on getting those together. But the systems, the actual sensors are going to be very different, where the Quest and Quest 2 basically have 4 640, 480, relatively low res VGA sort of monochrome cameras. And we know that for a lot of, we want to move to color cameras. I wish that we had been able to move to color cameras on Quest 2. Somebody's got the microphone problem going on with, yeah, possibly over there. Because I knew that we were right at the limit on our position tracking, where you can tell, like if I held a sheet of paper up rendered properly at this distance, I could tell a little bit of kind of jittering going on. And then also it would be great to have the Sly Dog. I think that might be you. Yeah. Can you mute or back away? That's good. So, and obviously for the pass-through video and something like that would be much, much better with high-res color, because that gives you a view of kind of what the tracking system gets to look at, except it's got 4 views instead of this one merged view that you've got. So it sees more of the world, but that's about that kind of grainy, low-res, low-quality view. And it's pretty amazing that it's able to do this sub-millimeter tracking based on that, where it looks at features. So the way these tracking systems work, they identify little things that seem to be stable in the world, and usually it's kind of what pixel location is this corner at, and you did your tracking like that, it would be very steppy. So instead they wind up resolving these down to something like 1/10 of a pixel. And when you look at the pass-through cameras and you see how grainy, messy all of this is, it's again kind of amazing that it works as well as it does, that it can resolve things from this mess of pixels down to nearly 1/10 of a pixel. But the easiest thing to do is just give us higher resolution cameras. I mean, we have all these megapixel cameras on phones that for a long time, a lot of computer vision people were kind of afraid of rolling shutter and color cameras. For a lot of things, the cameras that we have on Quest are global shutter cameras where they take kind of a snapshot of the world continuously, while phone cameras are rolling shutter. They're kind of continuously taking a view. And you see this when you've got moving things like videos of kind of propellers that wind up all distorted or cars going by. They've got this sheared look to it. And that makes it a lot harder. It makes the math harder for figuring out how you do things. And another kind of subtle thing, this subpixel tracking that you could do with these grayscale images, the way color cameras work is it's basically the same sensor, but it's got red, green, and blue filters on top of it. So it's just one pixel instead of being the gray pixel a little over here. This is only seeing the red from it. But that means that you've got a red pixel here and then a red pixel 3 more units over. It's actually in a different Bayer pattern, but they're not right next to each other. So that makes resolving some of these subpixel things a little bit harder. So in the simplest way, these make life harder, and life is just easier if you say, give me these global shutter cameras that happen to be lower resolution. But we have some of the best computer vision people in the world working at the company, and I have all the confidence that if we give them a hard problem here, that they can sort it all out and solve it. And high-res color cameras would both give us super precise positioning for like looking at close monitors and getting great shots there. It would give us high quality for the pass-through, where if we had our pass-through at the same quality as these peak quality immersive videos, it looks really good. It's still not exactly reality, but that's another thing when I was talking about looking underneath the headset and being able to match the controllers with reality. It would be great to have super quality pass-through and literally match the world to that and be able to say, you know, lift up the headset, put it down, and it looks almost the same. We can still tell we're looking at a screen, but the closer we can get to that, you know, that's one of the grand goals. Anybody? Yeah, it's on me up.
Hi. First of all, thank you. I really appreciated your honesty at the beginning of your talk. You know, kind of being open about your opinions on where VR is at the moment. So thank you for being open about that. My question is actually related to the Quest microphone bug. I was wondering if that was addressed in the Quest 2.
So we believe this is all, people are kind of freaking out about that right now with this going on, but it's almost certainly a software problem. I mean, it's not, I don't think that that's an issue that's going to happen that will plague Quest. We just need to go in and sort that out. This whole comes back to one of my themes through a lot of this is we have so many stacked layers of abstraction where it really gets in the way, where there's layers that people don't even know exist. Like I wish that our headsets had something where it just streamed in the analog to digital and it's just going into a buffer in memory. But the microphones and the speakers are actually connected to this completely separate little bit of hardware that in some cases is running proprietary algorithms for noise canceling and things like that before it even gets to the Linux kernel side of things in Android, which then goes to goes through like the kernel and then into the Android HAL, and then it goes into like an Oculus level microphone abstraction so that every application didn't wind up competing against the microphone. You know, we had the problem where, you know, our shell system wants to use the microphone for voice control, but then an application wants to use it, and that's normally prohibited in Android to have like multiple ones at the same time. So we've got this extra service layered on top of it. But it just makes tracking these things down, like, why do we have 770 milliseconds of voice latency between all of this? Why do we have a microphone problem going? And it can just be hard to track it down through all of these layers. And you wind up with, it's even worse because some of this stuff winds up, okay, this is written in Java, this is written in C++, this is in C over here. They have different build systems. The core Android system, you've got one build system for the Linux kernel, you've got another build system for the Android system, you've got yet another build system for our applications. And this is, you know, this is the type of thing that I love software, but some days I hate the software development process because there are all of these things there. And I have this, this fantasy almost of saying, couldn't we have just written this with one cohesive team, do it all in C++ in the same build system? And I've kind of bemoaned that to Boz at times, and he basically said, I don't think we could hire enough good C++ programmers to do that. I don't really agree with him. I think there are enough people. I mean, there are some great C++ programmers in the game development industry, and some of the best people that I work with came from game dev. But the kind of Facebook world, the Silicon Valley world, a lot of that is more like, let's do lots of things in JavaScript. Let's do lots of things with kind of the the big company and the startup company, there's a Silicon Valley way of doing things that is not the game dev way of doing things. And it has advantages. It spews out billions of dollars in many ways, but it is not the same tight thing where you have game devs that are like obsessing over VTune or various Pix tuning tools and making sure that really this is every cycle counts. We really get this shader down. We've tweaked something in the shader. I mean, we're not worried about tweaking variables and shaders. We're worried about too many processes running in the current case. And it does make me despair a little bit, but I take this is great. This is kind of working. This is kind of what we want VR to be. And it's been a 7-year journey on this, but it's not all wasted. It's not where I wish it was, but we are making progress. This is something we didn't have even a year ago. And this is just early beta and it's going to get a lot better. So, yeah, all right.
Could you give a brief description of where you wish that what you want it to be in maybe 5 to 10 years?
I really don't like looking that far ahead. I mean, there's places that I think we could be today if we had just prioritized a little bit better, where I wish we had the Google Play Store and every Android app that you use on your phone showed up better in VR than it does on your phone, where you go ahead and bring up everything you might want to do. You can do all of your applications there. We have keyboard, all the things that you might want to plug in input-wise. Keyboard and mouse is as good as a PC. You have the remote desktop streaming. We have all the things that we do in VR, but everybody does everything right. Like I'm looking here at the just the little stream neon hallway going back there, and I'm like, something's not sRGB right because those aren't anti-aliasing as well as they should be. There's little things that should get sorted out, and just if everybody did everything right, which of course will never happen, but it's possible to do now, which means that maybe we just get it 2 or 3 years from now when everybody is doing everything right, where the media streaming is all perfect. It goes up and maxes out everybody's connection. Everything looks glorious in all the different things that they look at. Everything happens instantly. It's snappy. There's not long delays for the loading. So I try not to make these giant visionary pitches about where could we be with, arbitrary amounts of funding and resources and time, because there's there's hundreds of things we can do right now that you just go make a list and say, fix this, make this better. I think we've got a path to this. And it's all, for the last couple years now, it's just felt like all the ingredients are on the table. We just need to stir them in the pot right, that we can get there. It's close. So, I mean, if we go big visionary things, I do wish that we had the form factor to the point where everybody talks about glasses level AR. I mean, I'd be thrilled to get glasses level VR. And AR is just strictly a superset harder than VR. Because anything you might want to do in AR, you could do the VR version of it, and it's just easier. You've got easier display technology. You have a little more control over the presentation timing and all that. So yeah, I would love to see the fantasy vision everybody pitches for AR glasses of things. You just put them on and you see all this magical stuff, which is not the way any known displays work right now. But that's not completely crazy to say for VR, where you can make pretty thin pancake lenses. You could tile waveguides and black out the back so you don't have to worry about the light, the light level relative to the environment. So something like that could be pretty awesome. You go ahead and nail everything right, but make something that is 60, 70 grams that you can put on and wear all day long. You do all of your work like that. The visions of a productivity office in AR, I don't care about the AR side of that. Just give that to me in my virtual reality. I mean, I think that most people, while the pass-through stuff is kind of neat, for some people it's important to be able to see their environment. I think the whole point of VR is that we can make a better environment than what you've got sitting outside of your glasses. You can have the perfect environment outside. So in most cases, I think that we have really, since Quest, we've got the right critical things. I think that we have, whether it's controller, hand tracking, headset tracking, and then the basic rendering stuff, the things that are still maybes. Do we need eye tracking? Do we need body tracking? Do we need varifocal? These are maybes. I think that I could be completely thrilled with a system that we build with the technologies that we've got now, crank them up a few notches, do everything perfectly right, and it'll be amazing. Now, some of these things may turn out to be better than I expected, where I've heard people make really passionate descriptions about how important body tracking is for them, how much having their full body presented into VR means to them. And similarly, some people have said that, okay, even if eye tracking doesn't give us this huge foveated rendering win, it may make computer interfaces feel magical. Just this sense of looking around and maybe tied in with that little bit of brain sensing there where you just glance at things and it just does what you want. That might be a magical thing. So I am open-minded to think that some of these things that I don't think are critical might turn out to be amazing, but I think that we have everything that we need. We need more software to go with it. We need the magic software, but no miracles need to happen for VR to get to where I want it to be. Oh, sorry, Deku. Yeah, I'll come back.
I was wondering about the camera placement on the Quest 2. It looks like it's a little bit different than the original Quest. And I'm sorry if you answered this in your live stream already previously, but I was just wondering, does that affect your tracking volume? Because I know that sometimes like going behind your head can be a little bit tricky on the first Quest.
Yeah, so it is pretty close to the same as, there's some subtle differences in it, but it's not really radically changed. And this is one of those really kind of tough trade-offs where one of the things that we did have a lot of discussion on early on was the exact orientations of all the cameras. And we've got all these internal renderings of the tracking volume around things. And we always know that, there's problems. You can't do kind of unicorn head things and have it track. So it's a trade-off where I thought it was important to keep some stereo overlap in the front because at the beginning, I thought we might be able to do hands, which was not broadly agreed upon, where there were a lot of people that just thought that Quest was too underpowered to even do VR, let alone add hand tracking on top of it. But I'm happy that I insisted on keeping the tracking there. And that helps it turns out it also helps for doing the stereo overlap and things for the pass-through, the kind of mapping the world for that. But it would be a little bit better if we had those pushed off to the side. You'd get a little bit more. And since I play so much Beat Saber, I'm a little more sensitive to it now, where I'm not sure if I went back in time 2 years, 3 years at this point, would I rather have more camera angles over there? Because sometimes you lose tracking. We coast as long as we can, where when it doesn't have a view of it, it's just dead reckoning off the IMUs. But seconds, and then by that point it says I really don't have a good sense of where I should be and gives up. But we've been pushing that number further and further each time. As we calibrate our sensors better, we do better dynamic monitoring of them, we can let it coast longer. And what I think this is going to get us, as we extend it from just controller tracking, and we have our hand tracking as well. Right now, we can't run them at the same time because they take alternate frames and slightly different exposures. But we can probably compromise a little bit more there, where maybe the hand tracking and the environment tracking can use the same exposure settings. And at that point, if we're tracking the hands, the arms, and the body, then even when we've lost the controllers, there's only so many places the controllers can be when you know that your shoulder is over here. So I think we've got a good path to really solving the controller problem just by kind of integrating our hand tracking. That's something that may come along later in Quake 2 as a software upgrade. So, all right, chicken. Okay, hold on, everybody. I am going to go. Camera people are leaving here. I'm going to go shut down here. I will be back. I get automatically let in. This should work okay, but give me a minute.
VIP.
Hey, Gerald.
Man, listen to him talk. I saw one of the comments.
This is awesome. Wow.
I feel like I'm watching a rock
That somebody left on
awesome.
Facebook saying
He's
that
to understand when he.
they
when
said
he
I can listen to John describe the Velcro head strap for about an hour.
Hey, somebody asked me about
Riveted.
objects. that
I
might be
think it's
implemented.
all trade-offs, bro. It's all trade-offs. They had to do something.
Well, it's so that it, for one, price can get low on the base model, and then they're offering different SKUs for the the head strap, and then the head strap with the battery in it, the nice
Right,
lithium
right.
battery on
I
the
like
brain.
that. I like that idea. That's pretty cool.
I was thinking
like
ask Elon Musk just to put the battery right into my skull. You know what I mean?
Right. That's dedication there.
Get some I don't even have to use my mouse anymore. I can just click with my mind.
Grades might be hard.
Has anybody ever used like the Epoch EEG sensors, like the Epoch neural like EEG sensors?
No, I didn't do it.
They're pretty
Research
cool.
study,
What was that, Texas Brandon?
For a research study, I had,
Oh,
I had
nice.
to watch sitcoms, and they analyzed my brain while I was watching commercials.
Only shitty
Correct.
sitcoms.
Yeah.
So we did an experience that was like a Zen meditation experience where you could it was multiplayer, so you could two people could sit down next to each other and then focus, and then you had like a bar over each person, so you were
no
like
way,
basically
really?
like
Sure.
seeing who could focus more. So we kind of like
Welcome back.
gamified the EEG.
Wow.
stuff.
Welcome back.
Yo, that's
All right.
Yeah.
So, Chicken.
Yeah. So traditionally in all the different Facebook Connects, one of my favorite things, other than standing in the hall and listening to you chat, is probably the coolest thing. But running up is the watching you play other people's content. That's like a really amazing session every year because it kind of brings a lot of improv, just content advice and well-rounded just kind of things that are interesting to talk about.
Yeah,
So
and we
one-
could imagine technically some way to be able to pull that off in a virtual conference, but it would not be easy. There would be a lot of things to try to do, but I think that I could see it happening where if I did it basically as just a live stream and I played and narrated through all of it, but I'd have to work something out for people because, a good chunk of it is talking to the people that are doing it. So there would have to be some extra thing. And in the ideal world, it would be some kind of, avatar at my shoulders. We're going through this, but we are not close to having that sort of thing sorted out generally, where it is going to be a hard fight to get remote views. It's going to be really valuable when we can get that, but anything where we try to intrude other things into the into the arbitrary games, we can pop stuff up like panels really easily and potentially rendering with a little bit more trouble, but fully integrating in different ways is tough. And I don't think a lot of that, it's easy to imagine and ask for some of that type of stuff, but the games tend to be their own separate world, and there's a limit to what we can do with integrating on top of them. But I could imagine just simple party chats with that, where I could be in a party chat going through that, live streaming it while I'm talking to somebody else, but coordinating getting people in queues and lines up, and it would be hard to run that seamlessly. But that's one of those things we should have in the back of our mind. Yeah, and it's valuable.
Real question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Here we are with our latency problem. No, you go.
Yeah. Well, so Mike, one of the things that just hearing you speak, it got me thinking and wondering, do you have an opportunity with your role, and if not, I think it would be of great benefit to the community as well as your organization. How much do you get to interject into the creative process and kind of play with the developers that are, the meat in the seats that are building some of the interactive content and stuff? Do you get to interject into some of the early creative brainstorming? Yeah.
So right now I'm super happy that I'm here this year because it wasn't clear that I was going to, because I am mostly spending my time on artificial general intelligence research. I'm only part-time consulting at Oculus now. So it's working out really well. So we weren't sure how it was going to go, but so far it's going great and everybody seems happy with the situation. But it does mean that I have far less time than I used to, and I spend half the time that I'm in just digging out through mail and meetings and things like that. I'm lucky if I get to check in code once a month on something now, which bums me out a fair amount, but I'm still all about maximizing the value that I can contribute in various ways. And with a limited amount of time, it does tend to be more of these other things. But the content side, honestly, it has been a little bit weird almost through the whole time of Oculus, where the way our organization is set up, there is a little bit of kind of fiefdoms, and content is like this separate org. And a couple times I've made the point that, look, we have some game industry veterans and I'm here, and we are available to help more on some of these things. And I've been upset sometimes when some high profile marquee titles have come out with things that I look at and just there are mistakes here. We should have done this better. So I wish we did a better job on that. But honestly, I have not been that much involved in, especially the early stages when things could be, could be easily fixed. Often I'll get a build like when it's like, oh, it's just about to go master, and I'm like, but there's something wrong here that needs to be fixed. I am testing the new Beat Saber stuff right now, which is great, and they do a great job. But even there, I was like, no, don't make the panels transparent. That's a bad thing. Please, I hope you can fix this before it goes out. But in general, there's outside of the things that, like Minecraft that I basically drove through myself, and some of the things like Netflix that I did literally write. I am not as much as you would think, and not as much as probably would have been good for the company, where I was more than ready to spend more time dedicated to going through other things. Like, honestly, I spend more time with the start people and the app review stuff at Connect than with our professional developers that I should be more involved with. And it's been a little bit weirdly standoffish. Yeah, and that's something that probably could have been better.
Those sessions are just absolutely great. I mean, I see it. As
so we'll see what we can do next year. I mean, at this point, I'm almost hoping that we go all virtual next year and do it right, and nail it. And that would just be, that's like what we should be doing. But I mean, maybe we do go in person and we do, and we have the app reviews and everything there. But chocolate.
First conference I didn't get sick at.
My senior dad, he's not very tech savvy, so I was really excited about the social friends and party system, and it seems to be getting better and better, but it's not really at the
but
point
it's nothing
where,
to write home about. Yeah.
Yeah. How fast do you see that developing so that at some point I can really just have him pop up right next to me all the time without him barely pushing any buttons?
I wish that was a North Star view on it, but our social stuff has been, I mean, like I was saying at the beginning, it is embarrassing how bad we as a Facebook company have not handled social in VR, whether it's, our 4 different avatar systems, all of our different like social parties, tune-ins, all these independent little things, and they're all pretty bad. Because that is the vision that you want. You want to be able to give this to, an elderly person, and they know that it's just like, put it on, you get walked through meeting your grandkids or something. There are these things that we can do. This can be great. I mean, just even what we're doing here, if this was just an absolute 0 steps. I talk about that with all the things like on casting, where casting it's still this multi-step process. And it used to be just almost ridiculous, where start this here, accept this here, acknowledge this, and then it starts going. And I'm like, no, 0 steps. If somebody opens up the Oculus app on their phone, it should be showing what's happening in their headset, not go find the little icon and start a cast and accept, because we have to deal with people that, most of the world is not super tech savvy like Oculus Connect or Facebook employees or anything. So I totally feel that you're absolutely right. And I'm not sure that I have the best, news to give for this. I'm pretty, I was worried that Horizon might turn into be like yet another disaster, because we have, just our history of this. Every social thing we've done has been a disaster. But Horizon's looking kind of good. So, I mean, maybe I hope it's not just the secret of low expectations for this, but this is kind of working. There's all these things that we need to stick a wrench on and we can make better. But maybe we've done it right this time. Maybe 5th time is the charm for it. So, Vibro.
Thank you. Exactly on the Horizon topic, I absolutely loved the way in which you talked about spaces and the mixed opportunity. And there was one feature in spaces that I believe is notably absent in Horizon, and that was the ability to do Messenger directly from the environment. I was very lucky to have early access to Horizon, and I built a number of words, and it's a lovely experience, but it's really decoupled from everything else. There is no way of bringing any content of any. I cannot show a screenshot of a document. I cannot call in Messenger anyone. For what you know and for what you can share, is there some way of connecting Horizon to the external world in the future?
So I have good news for you on this, where we are moving towards is allowing all of the kind of system utility things to come up in any application. I'm not going to risk doing it right now, but on current builds, it's supposed to, like, I could hit my home button and bring up the AUI inside things, and they announced that we were going to have like a messenger approach inside that. So in theory, that should just magically start working at some point, where you can be in any application, bring it up, and then you can work on Messenger while the application is still running. Now, Spaces did a lot of things, like tossing people photos and things, but it's worth noting that Spaces brought Rift PCs to their knees. I think they tried compiling it on Quest at one point, and I was like, oh, it runs 2 frames per second. There are a whole lot of things that you just bring in every dependency in the world and throw it all in, and hey, it magically works on your desktop PC. But it was not close to working on a mobile. And I was worried that Horizon was going to turn out like this, because at the start, everybody wants to work on the Rift because you get happy, fun results fast. Unlike the mobile, where you may struggle for a long time. But it looks like, again, Quest turned out better than a lot of us expected. It was more right than we thought it was going to be. And I think even all the people on the Horizon team got to the point where it's like, yeah, maybe this is our platform. Let's make the right cuts. Let's build around the lower performance specification, and work there. But my pitch about the universal environment, the virtual machine that does everything, yeah, I want us to be able to pull up, whatever, separate, I want to pull up Twitch live streaming or something here. And eventually you'd like to be able to show it to other people. That's not, we are working towards that in the shell environment, where that was always my pitch from the very beginning, the shared social substrate. We didn't get that, but we're slowly tacking back to this. So many of these things that I wanted years ago and laid the groundwork for, we pivoted away from, but we're slowly coming back towards. So at that point, that's where we do want this setup where, you can bring something up and everybody in the room sees what you see. But we can't do that generally across all applications. We just don't have the right interfaces. We don't know everybody that might be in the application. There's ways that we could conceivably have structured the software stack for that, but that's just, right now, Unity apps are basically, they're their own world in a lot of ways. We can put stuff on top of them, but we have little introspection inside them. But the basic idea of, yes, you should be able to pull up Messenger, send a voiced message or something to somebody, and we really should be getting that. And I think that's probably going to be rolling in. I'm not sure of the exact time frames, but over the coming year. So, Coleman.
Thank you.
I know this is Connect, but you mentioned your work with AGI, and I was curious if you would talk for maybe a minute or two about what has you excited in that space.
Yeah, so I actually did have a little bit in my notes that and the whole probably hour more of talking that I did not get to there, where I try to keep a pretty hard firewall between my my personal AI work and the Facebook VR work, where, let me tell you, be involved in a $2 billion lawsuit, and that incentivizes you a little bit to try to make better boundaries for things. But it does provide an interesting new lens for me to look at some VR things through, where when my take on AGI is it should be an embodied being sort of thing, where it's not just you pass it data and you get a result from it. It's got to be a real-time continuous thing. But there are all these interesting questions about how learning goes on and how time is discretized. And a lot of things wind up working with, say, discrete time steps. But like when I'm playing Beat Saber, I'm looking at things where, why does it work that you can play on slower song and learn patterns and then slowly speed up, where if you had a convolutional network or a transformer or something that is just taking these multiple steps back in time, that does not work directly, where there's clearly some kind of continuously variable timing speed that you've got going through this that lets you learn at a slower time, build connections, and then slowly, incrementally move it up to faster speeds. And then like a lot of people, another thing that makes me excited about eye tracking, which, again, the thing that everybody wants it for is to make rendering go 10 times faster, which it's just not going to. But One thing that excites me is learning more about exactly where people look, where they've done all these psychological studies with expensive eye trackers that are separate, that watch what people look at, watch how they move around, where some people look at AI work and say, well, people have a foveated region, but if we just throw fast enough computers at it, you just look at the whole frame image, however many millions of pixels. And I don't think that's actually going to work, where I think it is a critical part where the temporal tracking of our eye around things is critical to the way we learn and understand the world, that we do not just look at a million pixels. It's the tiny little foveated region and how we track around the world, and looking at the eye tracking data for that is going to be interesting. So being able to say, okay, I did a task, where exactly were my eyes looking? And there's a lot of work that says when you look at a face, there's this little bounce that you do between the eyes, nose, mouth to identify people, where it's not just that like you glance over there and all of those pixels are determined the face. You do this little temporal dance of tracking around. So there's things that I'm excited to learn about that. And then there's the whole sort of reinforcement learning side of things when I'm trying to push on Beat Saber and I've got it set on, I want to learn, I want to get faster. So you put it on insta fail so that you get the feedback right then when you've missed something, rather than all the stuff that you learn about how if you go on later and you get one sparse feedback at the end, it's very hard to kind of back propagate all of those to the things where it actually mattered. But the best way to learn something is to get instant feedback. So you turn on the instant fail there, and it's like, damn it, missed it again. Go back, damn it, missed it again. And eventually that's the fastest way to kind of progress through it. So I take some interesting, that's pretty much everything that I do is a matter of looking at things through the lens of all the skills and techniques and knowledge that I've accumulated through the different things. I mean, there's things that I learned in aerospace about physically building things that affect, how I think about VR headsets, all the gaming stuff. And, it's all great and wonderful. And I wind up being this hugely optimistic person because practically every day, something adds a little bit to my body of knowledge that makes me more powerful in accomplishing the things that I want to. So, Nikki. Did you have a question? No?
Sorry, I had my mic off. So what's your take on about field of view? What do you think about that, a wider field of view?
So there's definitely a lot of trade-offs involved with this. And for most people, Quest 2 does lose a little bit of field of view, a little bit more eye standoff, and in the wider views, you have some trim where it's off the edge of the screen. But we had one version of it was actually a custom modified Gear VR that had like an enormous 120 something field of view with giant lenses, and it was pretty awesome. It was something that when we were still deciding, would we maybe do another Gear VR, and I was kind of pitching for that. But it was awesome for. Okay. It was awesome for. Yeah, latency. We need to kill this. Give me my 50 milliseconds of latency. But so it was awesome for things like 360 and 180 videos, and that's because the videos, they're already there. We have the pixels, they're sitting in memory. We can present them as whatever warped field you want. It's a very different question for rendering synthetic environments, because the way all GPUs work to render conventional rasterized graphics, you render a flat plane. And if you just take out your graph paper and you've got a 90 degrees is nice and simple. You just draw the little right angle there, and you can see that, all right, whatever your resolution that you're rendering is stretched across these two lines. But then you say, all right, I want 120. So that's more like drawing, a 1x2 there. And all of a sudden, okay, going to 120, you have to be 4 times as many pixels along that line. And of course you say, well, that's in one dimension. I can't render 16 times the pixels going for all of this. So you wind up crunching it down. So okay, now I've got a wide view, but now I've got much lower quality in the center. And it is harder for the lenses. The cool prototype thing that we had was a doublet lens that was more expensive, more fragile probably in some ways, and all those trade-offs there. So it does feel like we're still probably at the sweet spot. For media presentation, I think it might be worth going a little bigger. Certainly there's possibility of just going slightly bigger. You can nudge up a little bit, 100 degrees instead of 95. I mean, already you kind of make that trade-off when you're rendering right now, where you can see, if you really push the headset into your eye and look up towards the corner in the best way, you can see the edge of the rendering. And it's like, oh, you could render 5 degrees more, and it would cost you a lot of performance just to get rid of that tiny little edge there. So it's hard trade-offs in our mobile, and I feel pretty good about where we're at. Somebody's got the buzzing microphone problem. So it might be okay. Brandon, next.
So there's only 20 of us here right now, but is this being recorded so that everybody else can watch it?
No, and that's another thing that we don't have right now. We should obviously have this now. I probably put the Horizon people on the spot with all of this, where I probably put a bunch of people on the spot this connect, because everybody else is like, okay, it's all pre-recorded. Everybody was making all of the pre-recordings last week, but I was like, well, that's kind of, you can't have a virtual conference if you're just dumping videos out. So I insisted on doing my talk live. And it's kind of funny because first I was like, look, I'll just Facebook Live this. We'll work this all out. But they over professionalized everything, and I had 3 camera crew like in my house for this. Which probably would have been better, without that. And then I was saying, I'll just jump into can I jump into Horizon afterwards? And I'm really happy that they rose to the occasion here. They got the special stuff where normally you're limited to like 8 people in a world, so they bumped this up to 20 in a simple thing. They set up a little stage and the gateway for me. I was willing to maybe just wing it. Like I was hanging out in venues for quite a bit earlier on, and it's clear that we need to, it feels like a ghost town most of the time. There's hundreds or a couple thousand people in there, but because it's sharded up, you can't really get to people and find people. And I would kind of walk in and out of areas. It's like, okay, one person in there, one person there. Okay, we've got a full house here with 8 people. I can hang around and chat for a while there. And I could have, I would have been willing to just kind of do that for whatever afterwards, but I'm glad they kind of went the extra mile and got this set up. And
John, I'm live streaming at the moment. Is that an issue? Or did we leave you? Did we lose him? Oh no.
We lose John.
Oh.
No problem with me, but I don't know if I don't know if anybody at the comms team cares about
I'm live streaming too on my Oculus group. I hope this is good.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I'm streaming it. So
it is on Facebook. So.
Yeah, I don't want to step on any toes.
No worries for me.
Okay, thank you.
I could shut it off.
It looks like it's being recorded.
But yeah, but the issue is that and the interesting thing is venues that we're heading towards now, it's very close to what we originally wanted to do on venues. Like the very first prototype that we had made for venues, we called it Stadium, and it was basically, we had the,
oh no.
kind of blue lobby area. It was just this great big thing. We pulled out, there were some fountains and things in there that we just got rid of, and you could just put 50 people in, and eventually we got like over 100 people working in there. And it was just this big area. You walked around and you talked to people. And I thought, this is kind of what I want, like a Connect sort of thing. And again, this happens over and over with a lot of Oculus stuff where people think that like, well, this is it's not professionalized enough. So it got very designed into the pods and the different stuff you could do there. And there was some good stuff that we learned from that, but it was not as good as like what we've got here. I mean, I would go into venues and I would talk with a couple of people around me, and maybe the people in the row ahead would crane their head back and talk. But it was hard to navigate around the different areas. What I wanted was basically this, where I could just walk in and go, and like people could get around and we could have a conversation. So I'm happy that it's coming back like this, but the limits of only getting 8 people or something in on venues is really tough. It destroys a lot of what we want from that. But even if we stick with that, we could probably make that a lot better, where you could see kind of the visualization of the neighboring pods off to the side. I wish that they just put a couple bits of communication. If all they could see was just people jostling around, so you could see if there's 1 or 2 or 8 people over there, and then if you could basically sort of just point and say hop over to adjacent areas. And then the other big thing, the design for the original stadium stuff was that we have a giant screen up there that everybody could look at, but the world was big enough that you could walk to the back far enough away so that you're not bothering people. Because the couple ones that I was having real conversations with people, I mean, maybe there was somebody there that actually wanted to watch the video that was streaming there, and I'm making all this noise talking with everybody turned around. What I really wanted was, it's great that you can have the upstairs there. They should have more passages that go to kind of the back room where you still have all the people, but you can just kind of walk back there, not bother the people that are actually watching the concert. Because, it's one thing in Connect, maybe I do, it's reasonable to have a Carmack override to take over a room here. But if you're at a concert or something, or a movie even worse, and you say it's like, oh, there's my best friend's there, let's just go pull back to the area and talk there. But it feels like maybe we are finally on the right track, though. We're not there yet, but this feels, pretty good for some things. And so, redundant.
Yeah, I was wondering on the front of a potential wireless link solution, if you think there'd be value in making some kind of external accessory that plugs into your PC and could talk directly to the Oculus Quest.
So yeah, the way the internal politics and drama on a lot of this have gone is that we absolutely could make a specialized dongle that uses frequency bands that aren't very used. There's good firmware stuff that we can do to improve things. And hardware people want to make hardware. So, depending on where a program gets driven from, if it comes from hardware people, they're going to design a solution that has you plugging in custom hardware. But from the software side, many of us were like, look, it works. We have an existence proof. People are doing this on regular Wi-Fi. And then it becomes a question of quality bars, where people will say, yes, but when I tried it, it was terrible. It was a garbage experience. This will poison the well. People will be sick of this, and they'll never want to buy, something from this later, even if we make a better one. And I've never really bought that argument, because there's always this spectrum where, the streaming solutions. And I did this where we have a demo of running stuff to cloud computers, and I started in one room of my house that was kind of at the limit of Wi-Fi. I put it on and started saying, well, this is terrible. This is not good. It's juddery all over. I'm going to get sick. But then I walked down the hall to my office where my router is, and now it's like, oh, this is surprisingly good. And then also one of my little gripes about in that exact thing, I tried to get up and literally walk down the hall to my office, but of course, you walk outside your Guardian, it shows pass-through. I'm like, okay, great, I'm walking down the hall, but then after a little while, it goes all the way to black, where you're like, oh, go back to your place or whatever. I really want that fixed, because that was a totally legitimate thing that I was doing there, walking from one known Guardian area to another one in my office. But yeah, there is very... Hardware projects inside Oculus are big deals and expensive. There are lots of scrappy little companies in China and stuff that can whip things together in a lot faster and more cost effectively than we can. We have to do our headsets. That's just, we've tried working. We've been disappointed. Every time we've worked with another company, we felt that we need to take ownership of it to kind of get all that done, but the way we want it to our standards. But there's certainly the possibility of something like a Wi-Fi dongle that we could take somebody else's Wi-Fi dongle, and there are legitimately valuable things we can do in the firmware. There are things within the Wi-Fi spec. There's long you'll wait for retries, how often you'll broadcast or check for different things, and these make real differences. And there was some really good work that was done internally to kind of check what can we do on the headset that affects everything, and then what can we do on the other side. And there's valuable things that we can do in both cases. So my ideal case is we offer the whole spectrum, where you have link for top quality, where you run the wire up to your headset, and we have lots of headroom for making that better than it is now. Take full advantage of this awesome USB 3 high spec cable that we made. So we can make that much better. Then you could offer Wi-Fi to a dedicated dongle, where you plug it in, and this is, it makes the pairing perfect. We do cool stuff to make it just a magical experience, where your PC just always shows up there, and it does the best possible job for wireless. and if you're in the same room, it's going to be great. But then we should still support just Wi-Fi through your normal access port. There's going to be more problems. I mean, if the rest of your house is all streaming movies and playing games, you're going to have more trouble, which is going to bother you more in VR than it will for video. Netflix can buffer 15 minutes ahead in a stream, while VR, we're like, well, we'd really like it to be 50 milliseconds or less total end-to-end latency. But still, lots of people will say, it's the middle of the night, nobody's on the Wi-Fi spectrum, this works just fine. Or they can say, well, I really need to get this done in this situation and I can tolerate some disruption from it. And then even after that, if somebody says, well, hey, I don't have a gaming PC, but my friend does, he opened a tunnel in his router and gave me his IP address, you should be able to go ahead and connect to somebody else's PC or a cloud service. But they're probably most of the time for most people, it won't be a spectacular experience. But even if 10% of the people, there are niches in the VR market. People buy foot trackers and stuff right now, which is just a tiny, tiny fragment of the market. And if only a tiny, tiny fragment gets value out of even a cloud solution, I'm all for it. It's like, I don't care if I think it's valuable, as long as one of our customers think it's valuable and they show us their preferences are revealed by their actions. People are doing these things, and so they must find it valuable, and we shouldn't say it's of no value. So, all right, slide dog again.
I have to ask you, what do you think about Simon, or AKA Dr. Beef's ports of some of your awesome games like Quake and Doom and stuff like that? I assume you've played these, right?
So it's an interesting story about that. So when it was when the Quake port came out, we were still in development on Quest, and I downloaded the source code. I played it, and like, okay, this is kind of cool. The frame rate wasn't everywhere it should be, but it was to the point where I made it 6th off myself for Quest internally, where I went ahead, went into the source code, found where I needed to go ahead and set things up so that I didn't get the weapons in exactly the right position and various things, but I made it 6th off for myself. And I actually had my lawyer send a formal request to ZeniMax. It's like, hey, do you have a problem if John contributes to this open source project? Now, really, I don't have to ask to do that. It's open source. I can do anything I want. I'm not prevented from doing that. But I just didn't want, ZeniMax to be mad about something, because, I wouldn't want the innocent developer to get caught in the crossfire if they were just going to do something, peevish about it. And, they blew me off. They didn't respond. So I didn't follow up on it. But I think that, and it's a shame where I think, I think that it could be, right now it's a hobby project, but the path is clear for what it would take to turn that into something that belongs on the store as an official application. Evidently, especially from seeing reactions today with the 9 Inch Nails stuff, they still hate me, so I don't have much confidence that that's ever going to happen, which is a damn shame, because I think that it's neat looking at it now, running on SideQuest and whatever, but it could be really good. And I'm sad that we can't do that. I would give quite a bit to turn that into a real product. I would love to see my old titles there actually available. And they really are at the right level of performance for doing something like this. I looked it up at the code where it made me really wince, where I'm like, why isn't this perfectly frame rate fast? And it's like, oh, this is like 5 generations of game mods on top of the original Quest code. And there's layers of abstraction over different 3D rendering systems. I'm like, okay, I'd have to go in with a big axe and cut a whole bunch of stuff, but this should run at 100. This would be one of those games that we could run at 120 hertz if we went ahead and nailed everything right, and that would be a glorious thing. But I'm afraid it's not going to happen. Anybody else? Okay, Nikki.
When you link the device to the computer, how much involved is the video card itself? I mean, does it matter a lot what type of video card? Like I have I'm running
Yes.
minimal 970 GTX
So-
with my 1080 below? Does that really matter if it's a lower end?
Yes,
video
it matters a lot because it actually matters more than even on the regular Rift, because in addition to rendering all of the actual imagery, it has to do video compression on top of that. So like a 900 series card is probably not a good idea for
Right.
that. And like so many things, another thing that I've lobbied for getting rid of is the whole annoying your system doesn't meet the minimum, the minimum Rift spec or whatever. And it was funny because AMD got me an absolute top of the line, 256 or 64 core, 128 thread system. It's an engineering sample though, so I start up the Rift stuff on it and it says, 128 gigs, all of this does not meet the minimum Rift requirements because it wasn't on the white list of all of these. And we just need to get rid of that. That comes back to the theme that I've mentioned so many times about this professionalism and minimum bar and all the worries that we can't allow somebody to have a bad experience, or we have to, in some way shame people that want to have an experience that's not what we consider the baseline of how we want to be represented. I've never agreed with it. And I think that's going to go away. So that's a good thing. All right, well, I mean, if everybody else is done, you might want to clear out and see if there's a line of people out there trying to get in and trade places if anybody else wants to ask questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much,
Right,
John.
okay.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
You're awesome.
Hey,
You're awesome, bro. Love you.
thanks.
Later.
Glad everybody had a good time.
Can
This
I get a
worked out
picture
great.
before I go?
Yeah, sure.
picture.
Come down.
Yes, picture. How do we do the picture?
Yeah, can I pop off? I might be stuck on this guy
I think
now.
maybe go over to the blue or the purple circle there. There we go.
Okay, yeah, it got me off. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Ready?
Well, let me sit down here and see. I'm at the right
We can
height.
get all of us.
Yeah, try to. Everybody that wants to get in, try to get in here behind me.
Yeah, good experiment of can we extend a selfie stick on this for the group photo?
Yeah. Ready? All right. Let's see here. Can we get more people?
Type
on
of things
on-
again. They were like learnings in spaces. I'm
Okay. Ready? Let's try to get John more in the middle here.
Picture.
Try to get more folks on his other side. I want to make sure this looks really good. All right, ready? I'm gonna take it in
Oh my
3,
god.
2, 1, and smile.
Cool.
Okay, I got
Let's see, will there be
Here we go. What do you guys think?
will there be objects implemented in the game to use like Poker VR?
Hey, that worked pretty well.
Yeah. Hey,
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
thanks for
Yeah,
doing
that's a
it.
good
I'm really
picture.
glad I'm really glad we got to participate in a hallway talk of sorts because I would have never been able to go to a physical convention. So it was just a delight to be able to hear you talk. seeing
Yeah, and
virtual
it's like,
space,
it is
and I
a
really
shame
appreciate
that
it.
we are limited like this on 20 people where, I mean, what I would love to see is if, okay, there's thousands of people involved in all of this. If it was set up with some kind of crowd control where people could be back, but when they've got a question, they could make their way forward, and some equivalent about letting somebody doorman manage things, but letting people elbow their way forward a little bit, because some people just want to listen, but right now I've kind of encouraged people. It's like, no, there might be people that want to talk, so we have to make these trade-offs. But again, I see a path. I think we can get where we want to go from this, and I think we're maybe finally heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it turned out great.
So,
Will there be
Yeah, that's
objects
good.
implemented in the game like Poker VR that you can just take out and start using?
yeah, there's a ton of stuff that they've got. I was worried that they were too, ambitious in all the things that they want to do in Horizon, where they've got a ton of programmable stuff, and they'll be pulling a lot of stuff in over the coming years.
Sweet. All right.
So,
I did not mean to throw that at you. I thought I was going to throw it off, and I thought it was going to disintegrate into pixels. I'm so sorry.
Ban him.
No.
We need a
VR
security
assault.
team.
yeah,
Luckily, the haptics aren't there yet.
If I was going to be posting like a video of this presentation in VR later, if this was being streamed somewhere.
so
If you don't-
several people said that they were streaming it or recording it, so they should show up at some point.
Yeah, if you guys
I'll
don't
look
care,
on
I'll put it up
later.
on my YouTube
Yeah.
channel so you guys can see it, if that's okay.
What's
You
the
should post
YouTube
it on
channel?
our
Yeah, again, no
Oculus,
problem for
too.
me.
Insomnia Doodles is your YouTube channel.
Yeah, oh yeah,
Thank you
I
so
am
much for answering so many
Insomnia Doodle.
Mhm.
Thank you, Insomnia Doodles.
Thank you, guys. And thank you, John, for allowing that.
Okay. All right,
Yes, thank
so
you, Don.
yeah, if anybody wants to run outside, and you can wave people in if there's anybody else out there. So I'll hang
All
out
right.
here for a little while.
Yep.
I'm
All right.
We'll see you in 1 year.
I'm gonna take off.
Okay.
Thank you for get in.
That was a lot
Thank
of
you
fun.
again.
Appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Goodbye. Have a good night.
Can I ask you?
Bye.